billionaire's private plane costs more than most people's houses. His watch costs more than a car. His house has a bowling alley in it. And yet, ask his accountant one question. How does he actually think about money day to day? And you will not hear a single word about planes, watches, or bowling alleys. You'll hear something far stranger. Because the truth is, the richest people on earth don't get rich by spending like rich people. They get rich by doing a handful of small, almost boring things, privately, consistently for decades, that never make it into the documentaries or the magazine covers. Things that would honestly bore most viewers if a headline tried to sell them. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 12 of those habits. Real patterns pulled from biographies, shareholder letters, court filings, and interviews with people who have actually sat across the table from billionaires. Some of these will surprise you. One of them, habit number 4, is the exact opposite of what every finance influencer on this platform tells you to do. And it's one of the biggest reasons the wealth gap keeps widening. And stick around for the final habit, because it's the one that self-made billionaires almost never say out loud in public. But every single one of them admits to it in private. Let's get into it. Section 1. The foundation. Habit 1. They treat money like information, not identity. Most people feel their net worth. A bad month in the stock market ruins their week. A big purchase makes them feel powerful. Money is tangled up with self-worth. Billionaires, the ones who actually built their fortunes rather than inherited them, tend to treat money more like data, a number on a dashboard. Warren Buffett has lived in the same modest house in Omaha since 1958. Not because he can't afford better, but because moving would change nothing about the information that actually matters to him. Is capital being deployed well or not? This detachment sounds cold, but it's actually protective. When money stops being about identity, bad financial decisions stop being emotional decisions. You don't panic sell because your ego isn't in the trade. You don't overspend to prove something to a room because there's nothing to prove. Here's the practical version for you. The next time you make a money decision, a purchase, an investment, quitting a job, ask yourself one question. Am I doing this for the outcome, or am I doing this for how it will make me feel about myself? If it's the second one, slow down. Habit 2. They obsess over downside, not upside. Everyone assumes billionaires got rich by chasing huge wins. Mostly wrong, most of them got rich by refusing to lose. Buffett's 2 rules of investing, famously, Rule 1, never lose money. Rule 2, never forget Rule 1. It sounds like a joke until you do the math. If you lose 50% of your money, you don't need a 50% gain to get back to even. You need a 100% gain. Losses are mathematically more expensive than gains are profitable. Billionaires internalize this brutal asymmetry early, and it shapes everything downstream. How much debt they carry, how they size bets, how much cash they keep on hand. This is why so many ultra-wealthy people look almost paranoid from the outside. Multiple backup plans, excess insurance, cash reserves that seem irrationally large. It's not fear, it's math. Section 2, the invisible systems. Habit 3. They automate almost everything except the big decisions. Here's something that will genuinely surprise you. Many billionaires spend almost no time on day-to-day money management. 0 time checking account balances. 0 time comparing credit card points. None of the stuff personal finance content obsesses over. Instead, they build systems, teams, automated transfers, standing instructions that handle the repetitive 95% of financial life without their input. Then they save their actual attention, their scarce mental bandwidth, for the 5% of decisions that move the needle. Which company to acquire, which market to enter, which bet is worth the size of the fortune behind it. This is a complete inversion of how most people operate. Most people spend hours agonizing over a $40 subscription and 30 seconds deciding to finance a car for 6 years. Billionaires do the opposite. Automate the small stuff completely and think for days, sometimes weeks, before a major financial decision. The lesson scales down perfectly, by the way. You don't need a team of analysts to copy this. You need a system. Automatic transfers to savings and investments the moment you're paid. Bills on autopay. a fixed percentage that moves before you ever see it. So your discipline doesn't depend on your willpower, which, like everyone's, runs out by the end of a long day. There's a psychological reason this matters more than it sounds like it should. Every financial decision you make consciously draws down a limited daily reserve of willpower. Researchers call this decision fatigue, and it's very real. If you're manually deciding, every single week, whether to move money into savings, you will eventually lose that fight, not because you're weak, but because you're human and the reserve runs dry. Billionaires don't out-willpower everyone else. They just design their systems so willpower is almost never required in the first place. The decision gets made once at the system level instead of 100 times, one exhausted evening at a time. Habit 4. They borrow money the rich way. And this is the controversial one. Here's the part that upends everything you've been told. You've probably heard, debt is bad, avoid it at all costs. For consumer debt, credit cards, that's mostly true. But billionaires use an entirely different category of borrowing, and it's one of the quietest engines of the widening wealth gap. It's called securities-based borrowing, sometimes summarized by the phrase, buy, borrow, die. Here's how it works in plain terms. Instead of selling appreciated stock, which would trigger capital gains tax, a billionaire borrows against that stock as collateral. The loan isn't income, so it isn't taxed. They get cash to spend or reinvest. The original stock keeps growing, and when interest rates on the loan are lower than the growth rate of the asset, the math keeps compounding in their favor. This is why you'll see headlines about a founder worth $20 billion who reportedly pays a lower effective tax rate than a school teacher. It's not a loophole in the sense of something hidden. It's structural, built into how wealth built from appreciating assets is taxed differently than wealth built from a paycheck. Now, to be clear, this strategy requires collateral most people don't have, and it carries real risk if asset values fall sharply, which has burned some highly leveraged founders during market downturns. This is not advice to go borrow against your assets tomorrow, but understanding that this mechanism exists changes how you read every self-made billionaire lives modestly headline. Modest spending isn't always the full story. Sometimes the wealth is working quietly in the background through borrowed liquidity, not spent income at all. Habit 5. They pay for time obsessively, long before they can afford it. There's a quote attributed to more than one billionaire that goes something like, "I'll pay almost anything to get an hour back, but I'll fight over a dollar that doesn't buy me anything." This shows up in a specific, repeatable pattern. Billionaires, even in their early, far from billionaire days, start outsourcing tasks that don't require their specific skill. The moment doing so frees up time for tasks that do. Cleaning, admin, scheduling, even grocery shopping. Not as a luxury, as a calculated trade. The logic, if your time, hour for hour, can generate more value doing the thing only you can do, closing a deal, building a product, making a high-leverage decision, then every hour spent on a $5 task instead of a $500 task is a hidden loss. Most people never run this math because it feels indulgent to pay someone else to do something you could technically do yourself. Billionaires ran the math early, and it became instinct. You don't need billionaire money to use billionaire logic here. The question isn't, can I afford to pay for this? It's, is my time, right now, worth more doing something else? Sometimes the honest answer is no, and that's fine too. But most people never even ask the question. Okay, before we go further, quick gut check. Which of these habits has surprised you the most so far? Drop the number in the comments. I actually read them. Because what's coming up next is where things get uncomfortable. Habit 7 is the one that almost every self-made billionaire admits to, but almost none of them will say publicly because it makes them sound less relatable than the story they'd rather tell. Let's keep going. Section 3, the psychological habits. Habit 6, they treat failure as data collection, not a verdict. Elon Musk lost nearly everything twice. Both Tesla and SpaceX came within weeks of bankruptcy in 2008, the same year. Sarah Blakely, before Spanx made her the youngest self-made female billionaire at the time, was rejected by manufacturer after manufacturer and sold fax machines door to door for years first. What separates these stories from the millions of failed businesses you've never heard of isn't that these people failed less. It's that they treated each failure as a specific correctable data point, rather than a broad verdict on their worth or their odds. "This pricing model didn't work" is a fixable sentence. "I'm not cut out for this" is not. Most people's inner monologue after a financial setback jumps straight to the second sentence. Billionaires, or at least the self-made ones who talk honestly about this, train themselves to stay in the first sentence no matter how many times reality forces them back to the drawing board. There's a specific mechanic behind this that's worth naming because it's copyable. Instead of asking, "Why did this go wrong?" which tends to spiral into self-blame, they ask, "What specifically would I do differently with this exact information?" That second question is narrow, mechanical, and forward-facing. It produces an action item instead of a feeling. It's a small linguistic shift, but run it enough times across enough setbacks, and it quietly rewires how failure gets processed. From a threat to the ego into a routine input for the next decision. Habit 7. They are ruthlessly, uncomfortably selfish with their calendar, and they rarely admit this publicly. Here it is, the one they don't like saying out loud. Publicly, the story is always hustle, hard work, waking up at 4 a.m. Privately, what actually separates high-output people from everyone else is far less inspiring and far more uncomfortable. They say no to almost everything, including things that would make them look generous, available, or well-rounded. Bill Gates famously used to schedule his time down to 5-minute blocks. Jeff Bezos has talked about protecting his mornings so fiercely that he refuses early meetings entirely because a bad decision made on low energy costs the company more than any meeting could be worth. This isn't a productivity hack for a video thumbnail. It's a value statement. It says, "My attention is the single scarcest resource I own, more valuable than my money, and I will disappoint people to protect it." Here's why they don't say this publicly. It sounds harsh. It sounds unrelatable. "I ignore 90% of the messages I receive" doesn't make for a warm interview quote, so the public story becomes hard work and hustle, while the private mechanism is closer to brutal, uncomfortable prioritization every single day, including with people I like. Habit 8. They buy boring compounding assets before they buy anything fun. Here's a pattern that repeats across almost every self-made billionaire biography. The first big purchase, once real money started coming in, was almost never the fun one. It was more shares of an index fund, more equity reinvested into the business, real estate that produced rental income, not a vacation home. The fun purchases, the jets, the art, the multiple houses, came years, sometimes decades, after the boring compounding assets were already large enough to fund the fun stuff from their growth alone, without ever touching the principal. This is the actual order of operations, and it's almost never the order regular financial content implies. Buy the appreciating thing first. Let it compound in the background, ignored for years. Only spend on lifestyle once the machine is big enough that spending on lifestyle doesn't slow the machine down. We're about halfway through, and I promise the next 4 habits are the ones that actually explain how a good income turns into generational wealth, not just a fatter checking account. Habit 10 especially, it's the one accountants for the ultra-wealthy talk about the most, and everyone else talks about the least. Section 4. The wealth-building mechanics. Habit 9. They separate rich from wealthy, and optimize, only for the second one. There's a distinction that gets lost in most money conversations. Rich is a number, income, or a lump sum in an account. Wealthy is a rate, the speed at which your assets generate more assets without you trading additional hours for it. A surgeon making $800,000 a year can be rich and not wealthy if every dollar is tied to the next hour they work. A founder whose company generates cash flow while they sleep can be modestly rich and genuinely wealthy because the machine runs without them. Billionaires obsess over the second definition, almost exclusively. It's why so many of them keep working long after the money stops mattering for lifestyle purposes. The goal was never the number. It was building something that generates value independent of their personal hours. Once you see this distinction, a lot of billionaire behavior that looks irrational, why keep working past $1 billion, makes complete sense. They're not optimizing for spending power. They're optimizing for the machine. This also explains something that confuses a lot of people about how billionaires talk about money in interviews. When a founder says something like, "The number stopped meaning anything to me a while ago," it sounds like false modesty or a line meant to seem relatable. Often it's literal. Once the machine is generating far more than any realistic lifestyle could spend, the number on the account genuinely does become abstract, almost like a scoreboard in a game they have already effectively won. While the rate at which it grows, the health of the machine itself, is still the thing that occupies their actual attention day to day. Habit 10. They use trusts, foundations, and holding structures decades before most people think they need them. This is the one accountants for the ultra-wealthy bring up constantly, and it barely gets discussed anywhere else because it sounds boring and legal jargon heavy. But it's one of the biggest quiet differences between generational wealth and one-generation wealth. Most families lose their money by the second or third generation. That's actually a well-documented pattern, sometimes called shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Billionaire families fight this with structure put in place early. Trusts that control how and when money is distributed. Holding companies that separate personal assets from business risk. Foundations that create both tax efficiency and a mechanism for the next generation to learn stewardship rather than just inherit a lump sum. The average person waits until they're wealthy to think about structures like this. Billionaire families build the structure first, often before there's much wealth to protect at all, because the structure itself is what allows wealth to survive being handed to people who didn't build it. The tool doesn't require billions to start using in a smaller form. A basic trust or a well-structured will accomplishes a scaled-down version of the exact same principle, and most people never set one up until it's far too late. Habit 11. They diversify income. Long before they diversify investments. Common advice says diversify your portfolio. Billionaires do that too, eventually. But earlier and more aggressively, they diversify income itself, long before there's a large portfolio to diversify. A single paycheck is the most fragile financial structure that exists, because it depends entirely on one employer's decisions. Almost every self-made billionaire, in the early non-billionaire chapter of their story, had multiple income streams running simultaneously. A business plus consulting, a salary plus a side venture, royalties plus a day job. Not because any one stream was huge on its own, but because no single point of failure could take the whole structure down. This looks like hustle culture from the outside. From the inside, it's closer to structural engineering, building redundancy into the foundation before building height on top of it. And it's worth being precise about what this isn't. It isn't working 3 exhausting jobs out of desperation, and it isn't the burnout-flavored version of side hustle culture that gets sold to you on this platform. It's closer to something an engineer would call load distribution, spreading financial weight across more than one support, so that if one beam fails, the whole structure doesn't come down with it. A consulting client that goes quiet for a quarter doesn't end you if there's a second and third source of income absorbing the shock. A single employer's layoffs don't end you either. The goal was never busyness for its own sake. It was never depending on exactly one thing to hold everything up. We've covered 10 habits. Number 12, the last one, is arguably the most important, and it's the one that ties every previous habit together. If you only remember one thing from this video, this is the one to remember. Let's finish strong. Section 5, the habit that ties it all together. Habit 12, they measure themselves against a version of themselves, not against other people. Here's the uncomfortable truth underneath everything else on this list. Almost every financially destructive decision an average person makes, the car they can't afford, the house that stretches the budget, the vacation charge to a credit card, traces back to comparison. Comparing a life to a neighbor's life, a feed of curated wealth, a version of keeping up that was never actually a real standard, just other people's highlight reel. Billionaires, the ones who stayed billionaires, not the ones who flamed out, are almost eerily immune to this specific trap. Not because they're superhuman, because they built the habit of comparing this year's version of themselves to last year's version, and nothing else. Warren Buffett has said, in more than one interview, that the only scoreboard that matters to him is whether he's a better investor, a better person than he was the year before. Not richer than a rival, not more impressive at a dinner party, just better than his own baseline. This single shift changes everything downstream. It removes the emotional fuel behind status purchases. It removes the anxiety of watching someone else's number go up. It replaces a comparison you can never win, because there's always someone richer, with a comparison you can actually control. And here's the part that connects every habit in this video back to this one. Treating money as information, not identity. That's comparing your decisions to good decisions, not to other people's decisions. Obsessing over downside, that's protecting your own trajectory, not chasing someone else's upside. The uncomfortable selfishness with time, the boring compounding purchases, the structures built early, every single one of these habits only makes sense once you stop measuring your progress by anyone else's yardstick. This is genuinely the hardest habit on this list to build, because it fights against something deeply human. We are wired to compare ourselves to the people around us. It's practically evolutionary. Thousands of years ago, noticing that a neighboring tribe had more resources than yours was useful survival information. Today, that same wiring gets triggered by a stranger's vacation photos, and it produces nothing useful at all. Just a vague, expensive sense of falling behind that has zero connection to your actual financial situation. But it's also the most learnable one. It starts with something as small as refusing to check what other people are buying, refusing to let a social feed set your financial pace, and instead asking one boring, repeatable question at the end of every month. Am I a little better with money than I was 30 days ago? That question, asked consistently for years, is closer to the real secret than any tax strategy or trust structure could ever be. The mechanisms matter, but the mechanisms only get built by people who've already stopped playing someone else's game. Let's bring it all together, because this is a lot to take in. Habit 1. They treat money as information, not identity, which removes the emotional weight from financial decisions. Habit 2. They obsess over not losing money, more than they obsess over winning. Habit 3. They automate the small decisions completely and save their limited attention for the few decisions that actually move the needle. Habit 4. They borrow against appreciating assets instead of selling them, a strategy that quietly widens the gap between wealth built from assets and wealth built from a paycheck. Habit 5. They pay to buy back time, long before it feels affordable to do so, because they've already run the math on what their time is actually worth. Habit 6. They treat failure as a correctable data point, never as a verdict on who they are. Habit 7. They are ruthlessly protective of their calendar, even when it makes them look less available and less relatable than the public story suggests. Habit 8. They buy boring, compounding assets first, and only fund lifestyle spending once the compounding machine can support it without slowing down. Habit 9. They optimize for the rate at which money grows without their hours attached to it, not just the size of the number in the account. Habit 10. They build legal and financial structures, trusts, holding companies, decades before most people think they need them, because the structure is what protects the wealth once it's handed to the next generation. Habit 11. They diversify their income long before they have enough money to diversify a portfolio, treating multiple income streams as basic structural redundancy. And habit 12, the one underneath all the others. They measure their progress against their own past, never against someone else's highlight reel. None of these habits require $1 billion to start. Every single one of them scales down. You can automate your savings this week. You can build one small extra income stream this year. You can start asking every month whether you're a little better with money than you were the month before. That question costs nothing. And it's the one habit on this entire list that every self-made billionaire, without exception, credits as the real foundation underneath everything else they built. But before we end, there is one final lesson that most people miss when they study billionaires. They look at the money, they look at the houses, the companies, the private jets, and the billions of dollars, but they rarely look at the person behind the money. Because wealth is not created only by knowing where to invest or how to build a business. It is created by becoming the type of person who can handle success without destroying it. A person who can delay pleasure, A person who can stay calm when everyone else is panicking. A person who can keep learning when everyone else thinks they already know enough. That is the invisible difference. Two people can earn the same amount of money. One person receives a bigger income and immediately increases their lifestyle. A bigger house, a more expensive car, more payments, more pressure. The other person receives the same income and asks a different question. How can I use this money to create more freedom in the future? That single question creates two completely different paths. One path creates the appearance of wealth. The other path creates actual wealth. And this is why many people who look successful are secretly struggling, while some of the wealthiest people in the world appear surprisingly simple. They understand something most people learn too late. Money is not the reward. Money is the tool. The real goal is freedom. Freedom to choose what you work on. Freedom to spend time with the people you care about. Freedom from making every decision based on fear. Because at the highest level, wealth is not about owning more things. It is about having more control over your time, your choices, and your future. And the good news is, you do not need millions of dollars to start thinking this way. You can start today. You can stop buying things just to impress people who are not thinking about you. You can start building skills that increase your value. You can create systems that make saving and investing easier. You can learn to make decisions based on your future self instead of your current emotions. Small decisions repeated for years create massive results. A billionaire mindset is not about pretending you are already rich. It is about making decisions that your future wealthy self would thank you for. Every dollar you save, every skill you learn, every unnecessary expense you avoid, every smart risk you take, it is a vote for the person you are becoming. Because wealth is rarely built in one dramatic moment. It is built quietly. A decision today, another decision tomorrow. Thousands of small choices that nobody sees. Until one day, the results become impossible to ignore. So, the next time you see a billionaire on the cover of a magazine, don't just look at what they own. Ask yourself, what decisions did they make when nobody was watching? Because that's where the real story is. Not in the luxury, not in the fame, not in the billions. The real story is in the habits, the mindset, the discipline, and the choices made every single day. That is the difference between simply earning money and building wealth that lasts. Thank you for watching until the end. Remember, your financial future is not created by one big decision. It is created by the small decisions you repeat every day. Keep learning, keep improving, and keep building the future version of yourself. If this video gave you a genuinely new way to think about money, not just facts, but an actual shift in how you look at your own decisions, that's exactly what this channel is built to do, every single week. We break down the real, research patterns behind wealth, power, and decision-making. No hype, no get-rich-quick nonsense. Just what actually holds up when you look closely at how the wealthiest people on Earth actually operate behind the headlines. If you want more breakdowns like this one, subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it costs you nothing. And if there's a specific billionaire, a specific company, or a specific money habit you want broken down next, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And a lot of upcoming videos on this channel started as a comment exactly like that. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. That alone puts you ahead of most people who clicked on this video. Wealth is not created by one lucky moment. It is created by the decisions you make when nobody is watching. The richest people in the world are not just better at making money. They are better at protecting it, growing it, and using it with purpose. So, before you make your next financial decision, ask yourself, is this helping my future self or only satisfying my present self? Because every small choice today is building the person you will become tomorrow. You don't need to become a billionaire overnight. You just need to start thinking differently, building better habits, and making smarter decisions consistently. Remember, money is not just about what you earn. It's about what you keep, what you grow, and what you create with it. If you found this video valuable, Make sure to subscribe for more videos about wealth, success, and the mindset behind the world's most successful people. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.